Right, so Israel's latest demand that Lebanon disarm Hezbollah is as empty as their promises of military dominance. With 12,000 soldiers short, the IDF is already overstretched, relying on reluctant reservists and mentally exhausted troops. Israel wants Lebanon to hand over Hezbollah's weapons, but the reality is Israel can't even handle its own military crisis, let alone another war with Hezbollah. The idea that Israel could wage a successful campaign in Lebanon is as laughable as their claims of being prepared for it. Hezbollah's military capability, entrenched in Lebanon and backed by powerful regional allies, makes any Israeli threat sound more like a desperate bluff than a viable military objective. Lebanon's resistance isn't just possible, it's practically inevitable, because Israel's out of gas and Hezbollah hasn't gone anywhere. So the Lebanese government should stand their ground here too, because Israel really can't force them to do very much about it. Right, so Israel's repeated demand for Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah isn't just an exercise in military posturing, it's an empty threat, one that Israel, frankly, is not in a position to enforce. The Israeli military is overstretched, exhausted, and under-resourced. The ongoing conflict in Gaza sapping its manpower and resources, Israel simply can't afford another war on its northern border. Hezbollah has no pushover either. They're not just a group of guerrillas. They haven't lasted as long as they have if there wasn't something about them. But they're also a formidable political as well as military force, regardless of your views of them. For Lebanon, resisting Israel's demands isn't just wise, it's necessary, because Israel lacks both the military capability and the political will to frankly escalate into Lebanon. The state of Israel's military is one of deep crisis. The IDF is under-equipped, stretched thin, and facing significant personnel shortages. They can have as much equipment as they like. If they haven't got people to carry it, what good is it? Current reports indicate that Israel is 12,000 soldiers short, a number that cannot be easily addressed, and they've been trying for quite some time. The reservist system, once a dependable fallback, is now a liability, with many soldiers unwilling to serve due to exhaustion, the mental toll of the war, and repeated cycles of duty, and the growing number of suicides within the ranks as well. The reality is that Israel's military manpower is significantly diminished. Its forces are overstretched, have been for a length of time, and even if the country were to mobilize more troops, it'd be sending soldiers who are already mentally exhausted and mentally unprepared to face the kind of prolonged engagement that would be required for an invasion of Lebanon again. Israel's reliance on reservists exposes a fundamental weakness in its military readiness. These are civilians, pulled back into service after being away from the front lines, not battle-hardened soldiers who have been continuously engaged in combat. The current situation in Lebanon isn't a long-running conflict, it's supposed to be a year-long ceasefire. A ceasefire that Israel has repeatedly violated, of course, with repeated military incursions. So the expectation of peace is being undermined by Israel's actions anyway, further complicating any potential escalation beyond that into Lebanon. The reserves may not be willing to return to a front that, in theory, isn't even supposed to exist right now. So the real question is whether Israel can hold on to any semblance of military readiness when its forces are forced to return to the battlefield in a situation that should have left behind them now. And the pressure on these reservists is, of course, going to be immense. Reports indicate that many are refusing to return to the front lines, a trend that signals the breakdown in Israel's military cohesion. Just one more aspect of that. It's not a sign of force ready for another war, is it? Israel cannot expect to simply muster the forces to invade Lebanon when its military is already struggling with the burden of Gaza, again, supposedly under a ceasefire. The toll on Israeli soldiers, for as much as many of you likely won't care one iota, and I don't very much either, has nevertheless been devastating. And that matters from the point of efficiency for Israel. Rising suicide rates, desertions, and a general sense of mental exhaustion have plagued the IDF. The relentless pace of the Gaza genocide, combined with the growing psychological scars on the soldiers, has made Israel's military increasingly more vulnerable. The moral collapse within the ranks is not a hidden crisis, it's a public one. Soldiers are breaking, not just physically, but mentally. And their unwillingness to engage in another front is evidence of this. So any escalation into Lebanon would only exacerbate these issues, leading to more mental trauma, more desertions, and further military dysfunction. It's not a force capable of confronting Hezbollah if they return to arms in the rugged terrain of southern Lebanon. Following the 2024 ceasefire, of course, which is supposedly still underway, Hezbollah withdrew its fighters from southern Lebanon and downed its weapons, allowing the Lebanese government and the Lebanese army to fully assume control of the region instead. This marked a significant shift in Hezbollah's operations, with the group choosing not to maintain an active military presence in the south or any military activity at all to speak of anymore. Instead, Hezbollah's role has transitioned to a supporting position in Lebanon's political landscape, particularly within the Shia community, respecting the government's oversight and letting them get on with it right now. But that's coming under even more strain. The ceasefire and subsequent peace agreements enabled the Lebanese state to manage security, while Hezbollah refrained from military activities along the border, reducing the direct threat to Israel from this region. So really, there's been no excuse for Israel to keep on escalating, carry on violating the ceasefire. But of course, that's exactly what they have done. Hezbollah's focus now is on its political influence and regional defence rather than territorial control. The territorial withdrawal was part of a broader agreement designed to reduce direct military conflict along the border, whilst ensuring Hezbollah's role as a regional player remained intact. The group's political power in Lebanon is undiminished, and its support base within the Lebanese population ensures it continues to have resilience despite the absence of a physical military presence along that border right now. Hezbollah's ability to operate through guerrilla tactics remains key to its deterrence capacity against Israeli incursions, though. Hezbollah is no stranger to resistance, and they've certainly said they're prepared to return to that position. Israel's technological superiority, which has been a hallmark of its military strategy, is not enough to defeat Hezbollah's warfare tactics. The environment is difficult for them, and they've learned how to combat Israeli tactics. They've been demonstrating this for years now. The group has had years to prepare, honing its skills in guerrilla warfare and perfecting its underground networks. But the military challenge is not Israel's only problem. Hezbollah is deeply embedded in Lebanon's political system. The group is not just a militia, it's a legitimate political player with significant popular support as well. They hold seats in the Lebanese parliament, therefore its influence spans across Lebanon's Shia population and beyond that. Disarming Hezbollah, therefore, would be a direct assault on Lebanon's sovereignty. An awful lot of the population would take it that way. And the consequence would be immediate and catastrophic, not just for Hezbollah, but for the Lebanese people who see the group as a protector against Israeli aggression that the Lebanese army is incapable of emulating. For Lebanon, any attempt to disarm Hezbollah will be a direct challenge to the country's political stability and its social cohesion, and the leadership knows that, even as they're wringing their hands trying to work out a way to disarm Hezbollah, because they've told Israel and the US that they're happy to do this. It's not a matter of military strategy alone, though. It's a political and existential struggle. If Israel escalates its demands and resorts to military action, it risks destabilizing Lebanon and forcing Hezbollah into an even stronger position of resistance, with popular mobilization from the Lebanese people behind it. But even if Israel were to overcome Hezbollah's military and political presence, it would still face a problem of regional consequences. Netanyahu's government is fragile too. Domestic opposition to the war in Gaza is growing, and protests are intensifying across Israel. The public's willingness to support a war in Lebanon, especially after the losses in Gaza, and indeed previously in Lebanon, which was widely seen as a failure, non-existent. Netanyahu cannot afford to open another front while the home front is in turmoil, but he can't afford not to either if he wants to stay in power. The political fallout from expanding the conflict into Lebanon would be disastrous. Israel's government would be unable to sustain a war that lacks popular support, creates divisions they can't afford, has costs, both human and political, and they would be enormous. The collapse of public support for Netanyahu's leadership will obviously be a major concern to him, because even within his own coalition right now, cracks are showing, and military action in Lebanon could trigger a much broader political crisis in Israel. On the international stage, Israel's already facing growing criticism. The global community is watching Israel's actions in Gaza with disgust for the most part, skepticism elsewhere perhaps. The United Nations has condemned Israeli airstrikes, and human rights organisations have been vocal in their criticism of Israeli actions. European nations, particularly those with large Muslim populations, have expressed increasing concern over Israel's military tactics. Arab countries, once relatively quiet, are now beginning to express their dissatisfaction with Israel's policies too. Even countries that have normalised relations with Israel, such as the UAE, are now hesitant to openly support its actions, particularly if they extend beyond Gaza into Lebanon. If Israel were to escalate in Lebanon, it would face greater isolation from the international community, especially from Arab countries. This diplomatic isolation would damage Israel's long-term strategic goals and weaken its standing in the region. For Lebanon, holding its ground is not just an option, therefore, it's a necessity. Israel's only chance to win in Lebanon, actually, is through the weakness of Lebanon's own leadership. Israel cannot afford to open a second front in Lebanon, not really. Its military is stretched, its political situation is unstable, and its international reputation is mud. Hezbollah's military strength, its popular support, and its regional alliances, although there's question marks over a lot of that, especially in the aftermath of the pager attack, still ensures that Israel's demands are impossible to meet. Lebanon's resistance is strategically advantageous, therefore, and Israel cannot risk escalating a confrontation that it doesn't know for certain it can win. The consequences of an Israeli escalation would be devastating, not just for Lebanon, but for Israel itself, therefore. So in this geopolitical game, Lebanon actually holds the upper hand. Israel knows it, but it's not actually that certain that Lebanon itself knows it. Of course, for as much as we might talk of a ceasefire holding, the ceasefire itself is a sham. And this got exposed by, as always seems to be the case, the arrogance of an Israeli official saying the quiet part out loud. Lebanon is held to the full text of the ceasefire agreement. Israel, not so much. Their ongoing attacks were in fact sanctioned by genocide Joe Biden last year. It's been a year-long sham, in other words. So get all the details of that story right here. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the same time, which is very much appreciated. Holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.